Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Houston Element Podcast. My name is Missy, and I am your host. And today, I have the lovely pleasure to sit down with a true entrepreneur. His name is Mr. Townsend Russell, and he is the personality behind 100% Dad.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So I'm not familiar exactly with your work. It seems like you guys are still kind of new for the past couple of years. Can you explain to us about that, a little bit about what 100% Dad is?
Exactly. Well, 100% Dad is a platform. It's obviously for dads. And our biggest followings tend to be in that age range of about 25 to 50. And obviously 95% male. We have a few moms and grandparents and things like that follow us. But for the most part, we are a dad platform, and we put out bits of wisdom and encouragement geared towards dads. And sometimes that's a message geared towards single dads. Sometimes it's towards the married dad. Sometimes it's for a dad of girl, dad of boys, for the new dad with an infant. Sometimes it's for a teenage dad. So it kind of varies, but in an old school way of thinking of it, you can think of it almost like a digital magazine where we're putting out content geared towards a specific audience. So it's like a dad magazine, and we just release little bite-sized pieces of content from time to time, whether it's on Instagram's our primary platform, but Twitter, and we're doing a little bit more video now of TikTok and Reels and some YouTube stuff. Then, of course, the blog and the podcast. So we just speak to dads, and we try and speak their language and encourage them and build them up and give them some wisdom to better themselves.
Well, that's very interesting that you started this platform, and as I understand it, you give a lot of advice to help towards fathers of all backgrounds just to give them a better outcome as being a parent. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So when did you start in this industry? What inspired you to get into this industry?
Well, there's two answers. We started the tour where we're actually traveling and promoting the brand in, I believe it was March of 2020. It was right around the time COVID hit and shut everything down, because the original intent of that tour was to be live events and go around the country and holding small gatherings and build the brand that way. And, of course, March of 2020, that was no longer an option. To dial it back even further, the whole, when did we start in the industry, which I guess would be fatherhood, was probably when I became a father. And if you really want to get into the psychology of it, it was probably way before that, into my younger years, and that craving to have maybe a childhood I didn't have, or to have a father figure I didn't have. And so you could probably, have a few years of psychological analysis into the real answer of that. But it's been a fun ride. I like being in the industry. I like the fact that we've really been able to combine family and business. And I mean, my business nowadays is spending time with my family, and it's been the ultimate journey. I'm really enjoying it.
I mean, do you feel like people are really, really envious of you? Because that sounds like the dream.
Yeah, well, there's two answers. There's people that really wish they could do that and want to do that, and some people that even have to a certain extent. And then there's people who say, I just couldn't imagine spending that much time with my family. So we get multiple responses to that.
Yeah.
It is different. It was an adjustment, because I was always a small business guy, an entrepreneur. So there were times where I was gone a lot, and there was times when I was there a lot, just kind of dependent on the needs of the business. And so that was the inspiration. It probably ties back to my childhood big time, and my relationship with my father and what I was craving in those relationships. And then certainly I knew from a young age that, I wanted to be married. I didn't want to go through any divorces. I wanted to have a tight family unit. And that was kind of the driving force behind it all. And then when I became a father, I, was actively pursuing those goals. And then the whole start of 100% Dad came from actually our business. So I got to a point to where I think I was in my mid-20s, and I started having dreams that by the time I was 30, I was going to die somehow. Weird.
Goodness.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I didn't have any cancer scares or anything. It was just a strange phenomenon where I kept having these dreams of dying. And so I really started to think, where would I be leaving my family if I were to die tomorrow? If I were to just get hit by a bus or have a stroke or whatever it is. And the reality of my businesses at that time was they would not have lasted very long. They probably would have been a few weeks and they would have dissolved. Drivers would have left to get other jobs. Customers would have found other suppliers because I was the key man. No one really knew how to operate the business. It was kind of just all in my head. So I started to craft a binder. It ended up being about a couple inches thick, and it was labeled, what to do if I die. And it was basically step-by-step instructions on to my wife of how to run the business. So the day I die, what do you need to do? This is what you need to say. This is who you need to call. This is what to tell the vendors. This is what to tell customers. This is what to tell employees. I had letters written, and I really detailed out the day-to-day operations, the monthly operations, the quarterly, annual operations. That way, my wife could keep the business at least afloat and running to sell it or to continue to run it and maybe hire a manager to do the day-to-day. Because at that point, she wasn't as involved in the business anymore. Mm-hmm. When we first started, she was much more hands-on with it. And then as we had kids, and I think around this time, she was pregnant with our second, or we had just had the second. And the reality was she just wasn't there. And it was kind of all me. So I had replaced Townsend, the business owner, so well that I started thinking, well, now if I die, we know the business is good. My family's going to be financially provided for. They're not going to lose their income as well. But, who's going to raise my kids? And obviously my wife, and, I trust her to do that. But there was a thought of someone's always going to be telling my kids, and these are people that, will have different opinions than me of, hey, your father would have wanted this for you, or this is what your father would have thought about, these kind of actions. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't want people speaking for me that didn't really know how I would have felt. And so that was kind of one of those things. So I started writing notes and letters to my kids and sitting there saying, hey, this is how I feel about these subjects. This is what I think. This is my hopes and dreams for you. And I started to try and replace myself as Townsend the dad in the same way that I replaced Townsend the business owner. And I thought it was great, and I kind of, about halfway through writing those letters, I started to kind of change the verbiage so I could write it to another parent or another father, because I thought this might be a good tool for other people to kind of, get their thoughts and values on paper. Mm-hmm. And that turned into a book that I wrote. And when I reread it, it bored me, and I did not enjoy it. So I never published that book. Okay. It just kind of sat on the shelves, and then about 5 years later, we had the opportunity to sell our businesses, and that kind of set us up for, in a sense, for life. We were able to retire and just live off the interest that that money provided, and so we were able to, retire. And I wanted to kind of dust off that book and rewrite it and find a way to put out content. And then I started getting into social media a little bit more, because that's something I'd really kind of ignored, even though that was my generation that built it. And I kind of figured out Instagram. Then I started playing with, just putting out, little bite-sized pieces of that book out on Instagram. And that started doing well. And so I just kind of stuck with that. And we intended to go on tour to promote the brand, wrap the RV, made it cool. We wanted to travel the country anyway, and we had the means to do it now. And so I wanted to build the brand and travel with my family. And that's what we ended up doing. Now, the difference is in 2020, when we were supposed to leave in March, we were going to do live events, like small gatherings in every city that we went to. And, as you know, the country shut down in March. Mm-hmm. So we scrapped that plan, because getting people together in a time when people didn't want to stand next to each other would have been a difficult plan to execute. So we focused on growing online. We did well on Instagram with that meme platform, which has completely evolved now. Memes do not perform as well. Now everything's kind of getting pushed to that TikTok and Instagram Reels theme. So we're kind of refiguring that out. And yeah, we do have I have rewritten that book since. And so we're going to re-release that here shortly. We just had a couple of meetings with publishers this past week. We've got another book, a meme book, which is kind of like the best of memes of our Instagram memes. So we put it on paper into like more of a coffee book format. Mm-hmm. And we'll be releasing that here soon. And then the big thing I really want to do, and I don't know if we're going to do it well, is to do like fatherhood conferences, a dad con. And so we're just starting to put out feelers for that and see if we're going to try and put one together in Dallas. I think October or September, and see, I guess, we'll see what kind of interest there is in that. But I'm really hoping we can start to get dads gathered together, and we can kind of share our experiences, our frustrations, our pain points, our highs and our lows, and really learn from each other, and just open up the discussion of fatherhood more so that we can improve in that aspect of our lives.
And that sounds wonderful. And a dad con or dad convention, it sounds like something very unique that I've never heard of. I've gone to anime conventions.
Yeah.
But not a...
No one's done it yet.
Yeah.
There was something called MommyCon at one point, and it was kind of like a natural, holistic mothering thing, but that's shut down. I think they had some scandal in that organization. So a parenting conference has been done. So we don't know. So we have two thoughts to it. We might just get dads together and kind of do guy stuff, or we might do full on family events. So we like do it like at a Great Wolf Lodge, to where we can actually bring the family, engage with the family, and then have breakouts and sessions for fathers to kind of learn and grow in the fatherhood space. But at the same time, we've tied in a family vacation and we're spending time with our family. So there's two theories to it, or two potential avenues we might go. We might end up doing both. We might do both of them and see that they're a miserable failure and then pivot and do something else. We don't actually know yet, but we might have to do smaller versions throughout the country. So we don't exactly know what our audience really wants. There's different income levels. There's different availabilities to get away from work. Some people can say they can do it for the weekend. Some people can take vacation for a week. So we're playing with those, and we're kind of seeing what's viable and what's not viable. But that's an area I'm really looking forward to, because I like getting on stage and speaking. And so this will, obviously be a great venue for that. Plus, we're building up the fatherhood space. And the more people talk about fatherhood, the more it's out there, and the more it kind of becomes cool, the more people are going to jump on that train and focus on it. And fatherhood is a good thing, not only in the family unit, but for communities and the country as a whole. It has, and there's lots of white paper studies to back this up, fatherhood has a massive benefit to the country.
I agree. I mean, if you remember, from when you were young and you asked your parents for a pet at the store, and they're like, well, that you're going to have to feed it and take care of it. There's a lot of responsibility involved. And from adopting maybe that goldfish to then getting a dog or a cat to then meeting someone you love and starting a family, it all starts with those rudimentary understandings of normalizing humanity and instilling good values.
I agree.
And just throwing it out there, if you guys decide to do a barbecue contest, I will be there.
Oh,
I'm not a dad, but I will be there. I'll find my friend's dad, and I'm like, let's go. Okay.
We haven't done a barbecue contest yet. We are hoping while we're in Houston to do a dad's gathering. So we've already reached out to a few breweries in town to see if we can hold them there. We were going to do it at our RV park, but they were kind of like, we don't want that many people showing up. If you got 10 showing up, it's okay. But because they've got a pool, they've got a whole grilling area, they've got some outdoor activities and things like that. So it would be a fun place. But yeah, they don't want the place bombarded with 50 additional people that are outsiders on top of all the 150 some odd RVs that they have there.
Understandable.
Yeah,
Understandable.
it's fair on their part.
And so you already decided, actually, my next question, on why you decided to go on the road with your business versus staying in a secure, independent location. Do you really like the idea of traveling?
So I love traveling with the family. It's been an absolute blast. I never got to see the country. So my kind of knowledge of our country was what we saw in TV shows and movies and books. And, I was born in Maryland and did most of my growing up in Florida. So my mom still lives in Maryland. My father was in Florida. So I knew that I-95 corridor pretty well. I'd never seen the country. I'd never seen the Mississippi River. I'd never been out west. I'd never seen the deserts. I barely even realized we had deserts. I'd never been to the rainforests that are in the U.S., which I didn't even know there were rainforests in the U.S. I've discovered mountain ranges I did not know existed. I knew that there was the Appalachians and the Rockies, and I knew about the California mountains. I just don't think about them a lot. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea there was a mountain range in Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, the Ozarks. So I just didn't even know it existed. So we went to Arkansas, kind of passing through. It was actually one of the more beautiful places in the country that I want to go back to, because it is really just raw and undeveloped. And, that was an area where their river was, I think, the first national river, the Buffalo River. And so there was none of that 1800s industrial revolution happened on that river. So, and factories were always built. They had the water wheels. That was how they generated power. That's how they got their, obviously water. And that's where they would dump out their waste. And so that never happened. There was no commercial building. There was no factories, and there was no residential building on that river. So it's a really pristine place. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I would have never known I wanted to go to Arkansas. And it's a really beautiful place. And I had no idea. And great hikes. I mean, there are hikes everywhere, caves everywhere, waterfalls everywhere. I really enjoyed that area, which was a big surprise. But the whole country's been incredibly beautiful. I do miss having an office. I've been talking about that because this tour was supposed to be about 1.5 years, 2 years, and now we're extending into 3-4 years because we went to Alaska this summer, and then we still haven't gotten that northeast part of the country like Maine and Vermont and all that because you can only go there in the summer. Our first summer was COVID. Middle of the country was the place to be. East Coast was a terrible place to be. Couldn't even get to Alaska because the border was shut down. And then our second summer, which was 2021, we did the Pacific Northwest, which is an amazing place to spend your summer. I mean, we went an entire year without seeing temperatures above 75 degrees and didn't get bit by a single mosquito.
Wow.
It was absolutely amazing. So the Pacific Northwest, especially in the summer, is just amazing place to be. Then this summer, we plan on being in Alaska. If not, we'll call an audible and hit those Northeast sections. But so one way or the other, this summer is going to be either Alaska or the Northeast, and then next summer will be, whichever one we didn't get to. So it's been a great experience. Wish I had an office. It's hard. It's genuinely hard to get work done when your peripherals are always distracted, when there's always noise in your ear, because, we have 420 square feet. So, although we have the whole outside as a backyard, especially sometimes we move 2-3 days, you have travel days, you have to set up the RV, you're going off and exploring these new cities, you're tasting these new foods of these regions, you're finding new hikes and trying to really take in the city and the surrounding areas, which doesn't leave a ton of time to work. So it's just been kind of one of those things. I kind of wish I had an office. I wish I could drive somewhere, be isolated because I have extreme ADD, and then I could just zone in and focus and get work done because that's what I used to do. And then on top of that, I was in a blue collar industry. So, I could do office work when I wanted to do office work. And then when I just needed to fidget and move, I could go fix a machine somewhere, come back and do office work. So I don't have that anymore. All my work's on my phone and my laptop. And, there's always a kid crawling on top of me, which is a great thing. I'm not as productive as I used to be. 2 hours of work, probably I can get maybe what I used to knock out in 30 minutes. So it's just not as productive. I do miss that, as we're exploring doing these books, typically if I had my office, I would have the books shipped in, and out of our office, we would be selling them. We would store them there. We would ship them out. And now we're looking at that real challenge of, okay, I release a book, and where do we send the books? We don't know. So, you can only carry so much in an RV with you. So at that point, do we make the commitment and open up an office in our hometown or somewhere else and hire someone to manage that office and to be, pushing out these products, and then we can start to do shirts and hats and things like that as well. But that's going to be significant overhead and plus the cost of an employee. Or do we find some sort of quasi way, if there's a publisher involved, they could obviously warehouse and ship out. But that's more in the traditional retail. You still have your author copies that you're selling through your website. And, if we're going to be on the road, we like to read. I would be going to all these independent bookstores and trying to sell, essentially door to door, talking to all the mom and pop shops. So there's been real challenges that could be resolved with a brick and mortar location. So I'm very torn on that. I talk to my wife about this all the time. I wish I had an office, but I don't want to give up traveling. So it's kind of one of those things. It's just everyone's got those challenges. You have yin and yang. You have pros and cons, and you just got to do what's best for you. And right now, traveling is best for us, and we still enjoy it. And we just take on whatever problems and challenges those create, and handle them as we go.
So do you think the fact that, you and your family, you're treating yourselves with the pros, you're treating yourself with the traveling, the togetherness, and the time that the priceless time that you're spending together, and you're also spending time on trying to maintain your business and focus on that. So would you say, the pros and the cons kind of help you to maintain the business life and the family life?
I think they're just a result of trying to do it. The reality is we could just not care about what 100% does and just travel and enjoy life as a family. Or we could go home or find a new home somewhere if we wanted to and kind of set roots down and focus on the business. And, we've had those discussions. Do we just give up on 100% dad? Do we just, or not care as much and try to make it a business? And just it be our, what do you call that, philanthropic, our kind of mission work in a sense, because that's really kind of what it is. We're putting out content. We think the content needs to go out. We think it's got a very good message and it's good for the world, but it doesn't make money. I mean, we haven't tried to, we don't take on any sponsors or anything like that. We kind of we fund it all ourselves, and it's our mission work. We would like to turn it into a business. We're going to release some books and do the events and monetize it a little bit, but we don't want to be a sellout in a sense and just, promote anything that comes our way. Because, we get people that reach out to us all the time. Hey, promote this, promote that. And, they're products I've never used. I probably would never use. And so, we just say no to those. So, we have the discussions. I think right now, I am used to the way a small business mind works and a small business world works in entrepreneurship. This is what I've done most of my life. So it's in a different avenue now. We're in that media space. So it's not as tangible. Whereas before, I could just go out and door to door sell a thing. We were in coffee distribution, vending machines, and contracting. So I could take a little bit more control there. But I like it. This is just going to be one of those times where we look back and like, remember when that was so frustrating? So we're not ready to shelve it or not try anymore. So we'll keep pushing forward and we'll keep traveling and find a way to mix the two. I think I just always need that challenge. It's how my brain works. I think if I actually stopped pursuing 100% that or stopped traveling, it'll probably bum me out a little bit more. I like the challenge of, I'm not sure anybody else could really do this that well, so let me be the only one that does it.
I agree. I agree wholeheartly. My entire life has been doing everything the hardest possible way manageable. And I feel so accomplished when I get it done.
Sure. Going against the grain, I think, is a valuable thing. It's such a unique way to live life. And there's a feeling of satisfaction and validation that comes with it. That's really it's soul satisfying, like at a cellular level. It's just, no one can ever take that away from you. There's a sense of internal pride there that, you did it your way, a unique way. And, even when people are telling you it's wrong. And then when you come out on the other side, it's all the more thrilling of a victory. And even when you fail, it's kind of like, well, I failed on my terms. I died on my own sword. And, I gave it my best effort on what I thought was right. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It just, cards didn't go my way.
Exactly. So being that you have such a unique, work life and, and family life as well, being on the road, can you tell us about a specific time, like a memory, whether it was a vacation or a place that you stopped where you were just like in this moment, you're like, I'm doing what I love and I don't regret it. This is the moment.
Literally all the time. I mean, we've been on the road for not quite 2 years now. I think we're back in Houston for the second time. I think this is site number 120 or something like that. So 120 places where we've actually parked our RV. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, you have the surrounding areas. So, sometimes we park our RV and we're visiting 4 or 5 cities, some different national parks, state parks, things like that. So we are a family that likes nature, likes being outside, likes hiking, likes trails, likes exploring, finding, water features, waterfalls, creeks, hiking on the edge of cliffs and things like that. So we find ourselves in those moments where you're just kind of awestruck. Most of the time it's by the view. I mean, you just get to a point and you're looking at something and you're like, man, like this is stunning. This is amazing. Kind of get your hairs tingling a little bit. And you're like, this is just a beautiful, and we're doing this as a family, we did one hike up over at Yosemite and it was a vertical hike. I mean, it was 2 waterfalls. I think it was something like 2,500 to 3,000 feet of elevation gain. I think we ended up hiking over 11 miles, and we have a 5-year-old doing this. We had a 5-year-old that did a 3,000 foot elevation gain over 11 miles, I mean, which is essentially straight up, and did it without having to be carried. Now, in the beginning of our trip, I had to carry him more often, but at age 5, and he'll be 6 here soon. He's doing those on his own, and so we got all 3 kids, mom and dad, reaching the summit of these hikes and sitting there looking at these views that not a lot of people get to look at. And it is one of those, we were just talking about, soul satisfying moments of going against the grain. It is just a soul satisfying moment to take those things in, as a family together, especially after, there's some accomplishment to get to these places. So, it takes effort and, persistence. So we get those an absolute lot. And there's just times my wife and I, we talk to each other a lot, after the kids go to bed, over a glass of wine or something. We just kind of reflect on the life we get to live right now. And it's, sometimes it's hard to even put that in words, but I think we're both incredibly satisfied and happy with how life is going right now. And even if, we've talked about this too, even if everything goes to crud, because, costs are skyrocketing right now, investments don't look as great as they did a year ago. Even if we just completely went to zero somehow, which I don't think is actually possible, but even if we went to zero and we just have these memories of these last couple of years and just had to start over from scratch, I mean, I think both of us have agreed, we wouldn't change it. We would continue to do this. So that's where we are right now with that. Plus, if you go to our YouTube page, we make a family video for every stop we do. So we have these memories because we literally do so much, you can actually forget what you've done, some of these places. And so that's been one of the keys for us personally. It's going to be a tremendous value in 20, 30 years when we're looking back at these things. But even for our short-term memory, we throw on those videos, and they're not amazing. They're not cinematic quality, but, we cut out shaky footage. We make sure we're not going long on anything, so it's boring to watch. But it kind of reminds us and re-triggers all these memories that we're having. And so our kids are watching those because when you go out with a 4 or 5-year-old, you don't know what they're going to remember. But when we're constantly re-triggering those memories, he's actually remembering all these stops. He's remembering these hikes. And, as we watch a video, he'll sit there and say, hey, I remember when blah, blah, blah. And he'll remember things that were not recorded because we're re-triggering memories from that location and that event. So that's been really helpful, both with short-term memory. And I think, I just know when 20, 30 years, when our kids are in their 20s and 30s and they start to have kids, or, when they start dating, things like that, and we're showing their girlfriends, hey, this is some of our travels. And these memories are going to be absolutely priceless. And so that's one thing I've really changed my tune on. I used to be like, hey, if you're at a park, if you're out, with your family, leave your phone in your pocket, leave it in the car. I'm changing my tune a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. Because our phones have become our cameras and the camera quality is so good. Mm-hmm. I'm almost like, hey, when you go to a park, when you go to the zoo, or bust out the camera for a few minutes, not the whole time. You don't need to record 6 hours worth of footage because you'll never watch it. But you can get moments of them on the swing. You can get moments of them coming down on a slide, or, interacting with a gorilla at the zoo, or whatever it is. And just get a little bit of footage, and then put it back in your pocket and actually enjoy the moment. And that's how we've kind of been living. And then we do it at the end of every stop. But, as long as you're saving those files, saving those documents, you can get one of those free video editors and just make yourself a monthly or quarterly or even yearly family video where you can kind of splice all these little pieces together. And, the key there is, don't go long on your shots. It's just boring to watch. You did it, so you kind of care more. But think of it like if a stranger is going to watch this, we don't want to bore the person. They don't care that you are staring at a fish in a pond for an hour. And people, especially with animals, people just like to film animals. I don't want to watch the monkeys for 60 straight seconds. I don't care. Put them in there for 3 seconds and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And, not having shaky footage or anything like that, because that'll just make you nauseous while watching it. But, and just kind of clip together, a series of videos and pictures. And I think those are going to be incredibly precious memories and valued treasures in the future. And so I've been encouraging fathers and moms to make those little family videos. That way, when their kids become teenagers, you can look back when they're cute little kids, and you can embarrass them with their dates when they come over, right before prom or whatever. And then when the grandkids, I'm oddly looking forward to that. I want to enjoy every second we have right now, and in the future. Our kids are still young, but I'm oddly looking forward to being a grandparent, like in a weird way, and being able to show them these videos of what we did, and then engaging as a grandfather. So that's a weird thing to think about, and it's 20, 30 years in the future, but having all these memories and then documenting and cataloging them is absolutely priceless.
I agree. The first thing that we would salvage if there was a house fire would be the photo albums and the VHS tapes. For you young cats that don't know, right. VHS was everything back in the day.
Well, and if you're in the age group to where you have those photo albums and those VHS tapes, digitize them. All of our stuff, we have hard drives and all with all of our digital content on it. But it all goes to a OneDrive and Dropbox just because there's only so much fire. An RV can actually burn down. If that thing burns, it's going up in a few seconds. That thing is mostly glue and fiberglass. So it's going up real quick. There is a real thought that, hey, all my computers, all my SD cards and externals could be destroyed like that. So we keep everything backed up to like a OneDrive, Dropbox, some sort of cloud service. That way, even if the physical things are destroyed, those aren't lost forever.
Of course.
And then we mail home an external every once in a while.
Okay.
Just that way, there's some contingencies if Microsoft gets corrupted or Dropbox gets corrupted, and then there's an offline version. If you have photo albums. Yeah, digitize those things. Best thing you can do, because fires do happen. Mm-hmm. Floods happen. Mm-hmm. A busted pipe happens. So it's not always just natural disaster. Sometimes when you're moving or packing stuff away, for some reason you just can't find it. No one actually knows. Like, you have a clear memory of putting it somewhere, and it's just not there anymore. And no one actually knows things just get lost. Right. Not to mention if you're actually moving and like there's moving trucks involved, that happens more often than you think. And it's sure, you always want the tangible thing, the physical product, but if that thing goes missing for some reason, it's always nice to at least have some sort of digital memory.
Absolutely. And so in addition to your 100% Dad platform, you also do a podcast of your own, a 100% Dad podcast. And so you talk about different topics about parenting and families. So how has that been like for you?
I like podcasts. I like talking. I like to hear my own voice. I don't know why. It's just it soothes me, or soothes me. The concept behind the podcast originally was interviews with dads, and so we just go out and kind of interview dads and talk to them. And sometimes that's a divorced dad, a single dad, a married dad. Sometimes a dad with 7 kids. Sometimes I think the most we've ever had is 9 kids. Sometimes it's a dad with a new dad with just one infant. And so getting perspective, seeing what challenges they're having, see what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And I really like that layout. And then as we got into places of the country where sometimes I would go weeks without cell phone access, without the ability to record, there were sometimes we were setting up podcasts and I just couldn't get a connection, or we would record an entire podcast and the audio was skippy and jumpy and things like that. Just struggles of being on the road. There was a couple times I was going to coffee shops and recording, and then you would just hear the outside element. Sometimes they were playing music, sometimes it was just conversation. It almost made the podcast unlistenable. And so as that was happening, I started recording because I like to write. I started basically recording our blogs. So whatever I had written recently on a blog, I would basically put into almost like a monologue. And so we were releasing some of that, and that did pretty well. And so there's kind of the 2 formats we have to the podcast. It's interviews with dads, and then 100% Dad just putting out his opinion on a particular subject.
And I like that. And I think it's, I like how genial it is, you talking to real life parents, and sharing information and sharing feedback between one another. A question that I have, though, is would you ever think that your information could also be helpful in maybe even a criminal justice matter or for a medical professional, like someone that's struggling with, child psychiatrist or, someone that's trying to find a missing child? Do you think that any of this information could possibly be helpful for them in the future? Kind of a tough question. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would have to think about like a specific scenario.
Okay.
I mean, the content we put out is probably a bit more general than specific. We do get into specific tactics and things like that, but I don't dive deep into child psychiatry or things like that. We might cover it in general, but I'm not teaching a child psychiatrist at all.
Right.
It's just, I might bring up a real common sense scenario of like, hey, but when you do this, like this is a normal reaction we have. And they say, oh, I haven't really thought about it like that. I'm so in depth into the books and to the studies that sometimes I forget to apply real world practicality. The answer is I don't know. I put out content geared towards dads. I want to help dads. I want to help dads in their relationships and their marriages and making sure they are spending time with their kids. I think that's critically important. Make sure they're involved and engaged in their kids' life and not just a presence there, but actually an involved presence. And so those are kind of my two big moments. And then making sure that they have a relationship with mom so that mom and dad are on the same page. That'd be for the married dads. And then for the divorced dads, single dads is, how we treat ex-wife mom. And making extra efforts to stay involved because especially in the divorced dad scenario, I mean, your best case scenario is you see your kid half as much. And so we're talking a lot more about making best use of your time when you do have them because it's already been cut in half. And not to the point to where we're raising, kind of entitled or spoiled kids. Like, we try and make a clear message of what you buy and what you spend on them is kind of irrelevant. Like there are poor dads that are amazingly great dads, have great relationship with their kids, and their kids go on to have become fully functional, productive adults. And there's very wealthy dads that raise really bad people. I mean, just kind of snots and people who can't take care of themselves and people who, struggle with addictions and the law. So, money is not the thing. If you buy your kid the newest iPhone because you're divorced and you feel bad that you don't see him anymore, that's not going to make much of a difference. But spending time with them and having real conversations with them will, and fostering that relationship and having a good quality bond with them. And that starts young. I think those infant ages, those toddler ages, those grade school ages are incredibly important. A lot of people talk about how they struggle in the teenage years, and those teenage years get a lot easier when you have a really strong bond with your kids from when they were younger. So the more involved you are, the easier it's going to be. Because when you get to those high stress scenarios, those awkward moments, they're comfortable coming to you, one, with those conversations. And they know that dad will listen to them, dad will have an honest conversation with them, and speak to them age appropriately, of course, but and speak to them about it. And they're not hiding it. They're not trying to figure out on their own. They're not Google searching, things that they don't really need to Google search. The dad should kind of be teaching them. But in the end, the goal is fully competent and productive adults. So, it's dad's role to get them there.
And for that, we are eternally grateful and appreciative for all those dads out there, for all the parents out there doing all the most. We couldn't be half the person we are today if it wasn't for you guys and all the love and support you've given us.
And moms are equally as important. We're not dissing on them. We're just a dad platform, so we do focus on that angle. But yeah, moms are equally as important, but dads play a huge role. And if you've done any white paper research, you realize that the poorest areas of towns, the towns with the highest crime rates, the towns with the most struggles, are the towns that have the least involved dads, that have dads that are not in the home. And when you put dad in the home, all those measurable data points and statistics go in a positive direction. When dads are out of the home, it all comes crashing down. That's health data, that's educational data, that's poverty. It's amazing crime. It's amazing how impactful a dad being in the home really is. And that's our mission. That's our goal. We want dads to be involved because it can really change the world.
And we want you guys to be involved too, because we love you guys, okay? We love our dads. We love our parents, okay? We know y'all can't be there forever, but we want to enjoy you as much as we can.
100%.
Well, thank you so very much, Townsend, for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. And do you have any last little bit of advice for the listeners?
Sure. Dads, stay involved. Those younger years when they're kind of just sitting there not doing much, stay involved, talk to them, engage with them, play with them. I know for dads, they really struggle being involved at those ages just because it's kind of boring and they're not engaging with you and having conversations back with you. But know your role really is important in those bonding moments. The more you can do, the better. And that's going to help in those later years. But, always engage, stay engaged, have conversations with your kids, stay engaged with mom, be on the same page with parenting. So, and of course, follow 100% Dad at 100dad.com, 100dad.com, and on most social media platforms at 100dad, 100dad.
Well, you heard from the man himself. So go ahead and follow 100% Dads on social media and look up their website for more information. And don't forget to check out their tour that's going on this year till 2023. You might learn something. I'm certain that you will. Well, thank you guys so very much for joining us this week. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.